Good morning, everyone. Today we are talking about Kanye West, just like everyone else on the internet in the last few days. However, we are not going to talk about his most salient points that he made and why he's going to get cancelled from here and there and whether he's buying power and so on. We are going to talk about some other things that he said in his long interview, which probably will get overlooked because of the other more salient points. But these more subtle points are actually what can be very useful both for us and for future candidates and for public figures when they want to plan things around. So without further ado, let's get going. First thing, Miranda warning. Like in any cop show, towards the end, you necessarily hear when the suspect gets handcuffed. You have the right to remain silent, everything you can say can be used against you, yada, yada, yada. This is even more so if you are a public figure or if you are a politician or if you just speak often in public. So yes, public figure. Everything you say can be recorded and sooner or later somebody can use it against you. And what's worse, people can lift your words out of context and then use them against their opponents. And here, knowing how quickly the elections, how soon the elections will be, now I won't be surprised to see Democrat politicians, whom Kanye condemned kind of, at least indirectly, are going now to start accusing the other side, in that case the Republicans, that look, see how extreme your supporters are, look at Kanye West, this is what the Republicans really mean, therefore vote for us. So once you open your mouth, you provide ammunition to the other side. Another point to keep in mind is the talking points. Let's say here Kanye West identified as not being friend of the left, and he criticized them about several policies. However, what are the common main lines that the left currently is using? Collective guilt, and also separating people in various categories on oppressor and oppressed, whether it is black on white or men on women, employer, employee, and so on. And they also often, the left talks about collective action, like workers unite, and let's all do together, implying you do the way as we say. And Kanye West, in his interview, several times raised topics which echo very closely the leftist talking points, even though he was condemning them at multiple points. One was he clearly stated the notion about collective guilt, and also he implied the notion of collective punishment. That's when he was talking about projects, blocks, and how if you get injured in one block, you can kind of punish everyone who lives on that block. And I think that's going to be taken quite seriously from his opponents and can be expanded to other things he mentioned, and 2 + 2 = 4 things are not going to look very good. But what's more important here is if you are opposing an ideology that tries to capitalize on collective guilt, why you are also using collective guilt? Then you're not exactly against that ideology, you may just want some different outcome, and your most staunch followers will keep following you, but anyone who is on the fence or who is thinking will notice that, wait a second, they're all the same. And this is why often elections get lost and people stay home, because they see politicians from both parties sometimes repeat the same talking points with different coding, even though the ideologies are fundamentally different. And sometimes the reason is that we have candidates that may not even deeply understand the ideology they try to represent, but that's another topic. Going down after the collective guilt, he implied the notion of oppressor-oppressed. Here he was talking about artists being given the short end of the stick when they sign contracts. And keep in mind, so often we are talking about multi-millionaires who are signing contracts, whether advertising, whether a new album, or whether some other endorsement rights. The thing is, in functioning market economy, each party has a choice, and you pick what's the best for you. You may still want something better than what's available, but in the end, you have the choice. Here is what this, let's say, label offers you. Can you find a different label, or can you do it on your own? As Kevin Samuels used to say, there is always work at the post office. So the thing is, when you are party to a contract to which you voluntarily enter, and in a functioning market economy you have abundance of other choices and other career fields that you could pursue, in the end you're the one who agrees to that thing, and then it is not very intellectually honest to come back and say, oh, the conditions were bad, or oh, I was the victim. And we see often this happening, and whether somebody does it from the left or from the right, if you support any form of people's choice, including the choice to enter contracts, we can't come back and say that the contract was unfair, even though both parties voluntarily entered it. Because if you go the other part and say, okay, this is unfair, then we will end up bureaucrats and politicians deciding what's fair to them and fixing that as a rule to everyone else, whether they like it or not. So I take issue with Kanye on this point, and socialist or interventionist talking points do not go well if you present yourself for somebody who is not a friend of the left. And the final point, he mentioned at least on a few points in his interview about people should raise as one, meaning following him, and how he will be like a snowball, getting bigger and bigger, and then achieving whatever end results it happens, which is substantially very similar to what back then, even 100 plus years ago, communists were saying with workers unite. And now we see politicians, usually on the Democrat extraction, who say we should do this together, which, let's not forget that the word for fascism comes from the word of togetherness. The interesting point here is, how do you guys deal with disagreement? Okay, let's raise as one, but how about I do what you guys also do, or you guys do what I say? So I'm very interested to see how Kanye West can handle a debate where he will face disagreement, and then he handles it properly and presents his point. Because it is easy to go for togetherness so long as others are following you. Every politician does that. I want to see more people saying, let's find what the best solution is, and then if we gather enough support, we will follow that solution. So again, he presented a little bit as not being friend of the left, but brought collective guilt, oppressor-oppressee, or oppressor-oppressed, and raise as one. These are 3 points which the left uses. So you cannot reliably present that you are not friend of the left and raise 3 major leftist talking points. And the same advice applies to all Republican candidates, and similarly applies also to Democrat candidates if they are using talking points of the other side, while actually they want to show that they fundamentally disagree. And now there is another issue, and that's abortion. And I was very tempted to do a separate video, but I hear it often conservative commentators, especially those who identify as pro-life or want to limit abortion, they make this argument and it is very weak. And my recommendation is to not use weak arguments when you're promoting your point, because they just harm it. And what's the argument? Listing how many babies have been aborted, and implying that all these babies would have been alive and born if it weren't for the abortion. This argument, unfortunately, overlooks the secondary effect of abortion, and it is incredibly substantial. This argument assumes that all those babies would have been born if there were not abortion. But let's think for a moment. Let's compare the same city or the same town in 2 different situations. One situation is elective abortion is not allowed. Elective abortion meaning any abortion that is for reasons other than medical. And the other situation is abortions are fully allowed. So in which of these cases, let's say women, the group of the people who actually suffer the risk of getting pregnant, how does their behavior get affected? In which of those 2 scenarios women will be more careful regarding pregnancy? Obviously, the one where abortion is not easily accessible. If abortion is truly accessible and you can just walk into Planned Parenthood, then as some people have said, that's just my birth control. Why bother with birth control, or why bother using barriers which may decrease sensation and make it less pleasant to both sides? Well, let's just enjoy ourselves, and if something happens, then here is the clinic. So in that case, when abortion becomes just an alternative to contraception, then you cannot count all those babies aborted as babies that would have been born, because the pregnancy only occurred because they didn't want to use contraception because sex felt more enjoyable that way, and they knew that abortion was readily available. So that's point number one. But there is even a further issue. Procrastination and hormones. Actually, two issues, but we'll put them together. Suppose, and it happens, a woman gets pregnant. She says, oh, okay, I'm going to abort, I'm not interested. However, she procrastinates, and all of us know people who procrastinate on very major issues, and she procrastinates, and up it gets past the point where elective abortions are legal. Or hormones kick in, and suddenly there is a strong maternal instinct that wasn't there where at the time where the woman was having sex. She was having sex with the intent to abort, but now let's say after 3 months, all of a sudden, now she feels different, and suddenly she says, maybe I'll think a little bit, maybe this, maybe that, and boom, the baby's born. Excuse me. And here we actually have the opposite effect of abortion, opposite to that of what people originally would think. You say at the first level of analysis, abortion decreases births. Well, actually, when you have unrestricted access to abortion, so women can get pregnant easily and then they decide where to abort, you may actually end up with more babies because they got pregnant with the intent to abort, and then the hormones kicked in, and now you have babies being born and without a father being present around. So when making the argument against abortion and listing those millions of children aborted, just be aware of that weakness. You can much better say this brings chaos in family planning, and you may end up with children that were never meant to be conceived or carried, but because of the hormones or change of circumstances, now you have unexpected children that do not deserve their due care. So with that in mind, these are the topics that came to my mind while listening to the 2-hour interview of Kanye West, and shout out to MTR, Mediocre Tutorials and Reviews, who did a decent analysis as well. You can go there, have much greater outreach than this channel. But you can help this channel as well. We just started last week, so let's spread it around, and please subscribe and like and comment if you want. Have a good day.